Welcome to the Kickstart podcast. My name is Preston, and on this episode, we have the pleasure of hosting someone who has done an incredible job navigating her career, working at some pretty epic companies, to now becoming a founder at her own fast-growing recruiting agency that's absolutely crushing it in the technical space. Really happy to have you on the show, Tatiana. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Preston.
So to get started, for those that are unfamiliar with you and your background, would you just mind sharing just a very brief high-level summary of what you've done so far?
Okay. My career has not been a straight line path, so it's a little bit hard to keep brief, but I got my degrees in math and astrophysics, decided I didn't want to get a PhD, was like, what do I do now? But I learned to program along the way, so I went and worked at Microsoft. Was on the tablet PC team from 2001 to 2004, writing C# test code. Who wanted to be in Windows in 2004, though, when they tried to move us? And so I just decided I would join the college recruiting team for a little while I kind of unburnt out from that experience. And I found my thing. So I've been in recruiting ever since. So I did college recruiting at Microsoft for 2 years, left and got my MBA, moved to New York. And then I was about employee number 50 at AppNexus. I was their first tech recruiter. And then I moved to Etsy, where I was about employee 200 as a tech recruiter there. And then my last in-house role, I was an HR director at a little 50-person company called Aha Life. But they had some layoffs, and as the HR director, I had to conduct those, and that wasn't fun. And then I got laid off. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to freelance for a while. I'm not ready to go take something else. And now it's been 9 years. And so that I'm going to freelance for a little while turned into now having about 40 employees and working with some amazing, mostly New York companies.
Wow. Super speechless and jaw-dropping to hear that. So a lot to unpack there. And a lot of this is me hearing it for the first time. So you went to, just to kind of backtrack a little bit. So you went to university for, you said math and physics?
Math and astrophysics.
Math and astro, like why? Like, is that something you wanted to do? Did you have a family member?
I wanted to study black holes. That's why.
I mean, you had family members, your parents, were they into astrophysics at all? Like how does someone wake up one day and say they want to study
Stephen Hawking's and stuff. I was inspired, Like, remember all those Voyager photos that would come back in the 80s? Like, oh, now they just got to Jupiter. Oh, now they just got to Saturn. Like, that was my childhood. That stuff was exciting. I wanted to be a part of it.
Wow. So what are your thoughts of now seeing the recent photographs of the universe that just got live, I think, last week? I mean,
it's insane how densely packed the universe is. I mean, that was just like a very, very small section of sky. I don't want to get too deep here, but I feel like the main feeling that comes, when you see something like that is it's impossible for us to be alone. I mean, that there is so much out there in space. Like, it would be crazy if we're the only living organism. So I look forward to the next couple decades of discoveries out there.
It was certainly a goosebump moment for myself, just seeing those pictures. I know we're not here to talk about astrophysics and stars, but seeing the pictures, Tatiana, it just makes you think like how small we actually are.
Absolutely.
In the universe. And then just going a step beyond that, like all the little things that we go through in our day-to-day lives that annoy you, that frustrate you, it should be completely meaningless, right? Just understanding that we're just playing a small part in the massive universe out there.
Absolutely.
But I'm very much looking forward to seeing additional pictures. So you went to school for math and astrophysics, and then from there, it's not like you got a job in math or astrophysics. You then went into the software world and learned how to code. Like, talk to me about that. Like, what was your thought process? Like, why coding?
Well, I had learned to code for astrophysics. So we actually had to study astro data. We use mostly a language called IDL, but also I learned C programming. And that was because I wanted to do a research internship in Antarctica, working with photomultiplier tubes in the Antarctic ice, and they programmed in C. And so I had taken C, and then my advisor said, oh, you should take Java too. And so I did have some programming experience. And I mean, working on tablet PC, there was a lot of matrix algebra involved because you're transforming the ink. So it actually kind of combined a little bit of my math algebra background too.
So after you graduated, were you strictly applying for engineering jobs? Like, it just kind of was a natural progression of what you studied to like the professional world?
I also applied for some trader jobs. Believe it or not, I had a job offer from Enron. I
Oh my
interviewed with them
God.
in April of 2001. I would have been starting there in July of 2001. And then you know that they erupted all over the news around September 2001. And it was like, okay, I dodged that bullet.
Why didn't you take it?
Because I had the job offer from Microsoft. I actually almost took the Enron offer, but to work on an emerging technology like tablet PC, I mean,
Mm,
back then we had the promise of being like the iPad or something. We didn't know that, that Apple was developing a rival product. And I think we had a lot of hubris. I mean, we laughed about what a failure their Lisa was and everything. We didn't think there was any way they could surpass Microsoft in this.
mhm.
So at the time it seemed like I was working on, like one of the most cutting edge pieces of technology then, and I just couldn't pass that up.
Positions that you at that point didn't have any experience recruiting for prior, what did you do to help you kind of learn the technologies or ramp up? Any tips that you can share for someone that's starting the recruiting career, especially technical recruiting, or someone who just got a job and they're like, oh my God, I'm responsible for X, Y, and Z. I don't know what these are. Like,
Yeah.
what were some things that you've done in the past? Obviously, one is leveraging your technical background, but aside from that, any tips?
Absolutely. I mean, like sure you can Google stuff and figure out, okay, is this like server side, or like what stack is this on? Is this front end or back end? Like what do people build with this kind of thing? But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think, you find a candidate that you have good rapport with,
Mm-hmm.
ask them. I mean, people like talking about what they like doing. And so like you'd be surprised how far that goes, if you're just like, okay, cool. Now tell me about R. Like, what exactly is it? What does it mean to be statistical programming? Like, what is it similar to? Like, how do you know that you're proficient in it? Like, those kind of questions. I think, honestly, that's the best kind of thing, is just jump into recruiting for that thing. And no matter how much you know, you will always know less than you actually know, right? I mean, like the amount of stuff out there that you don't know will exceed what you do know. I was working for Thinks as a contract recruiter last year, and we got all sorts of jobs I had never even heard of before, like pattern makers with lingerie experience, people that had worked at like Victoria's Secret before, people who had experience putting things on shelves of retail stores like Target and knowing how to do product placement and promotion and stuff like that. I didn't even know these jobs existed, and now I have to find them. And so, I mean, just spending a lot of time with the hiring manager, like digging into what is this person doing day to day. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Like, I think job descriptions can be kind of overrated because you're kind of thinking ahead to like, who do we think can do this job, when really at a more basic level we need to think about what is the job that needs to be done. Because I think sometimes there can be some perhaps untrue assumptions into what you might need to have in order to do that job. Like at the end of the day, the hiring manager just wants somebody that can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so occasionally as recruiters, I think we kind of have to pick our battles, but there are times that you might find somebody that doesn't fit the job description, but that you truly believe can do the job. And I think it's really important we present people like that.
And I think that can only happen if you have a really close relationship with the hiring manager, understanding exactly what he or she wants. But
Absolutely.
I love how you talked about candidates before that. It's funny, like you're speaking to someone on the other side of the phone who is a professional in whatever market that you're recruiting in. They're the best people to ask a ton of questions. So as long as you're open-minded, operate like a sponge, just absorb. It'll beat any YouTube video or books out there.
Absolutely.
So you joined AppNexus, and then I think even after that, you've worked at another tech company, as you mentioned,
Etsy.
previous Etsy. So I guess for both the positions, on average, how many positions were you responsible for working
Oh
at
my
these
gosh, I had
companies?
probably had like 30 or 40 open roles at a time. It was insane.
That
Um,
sounds insane.
Oh, it was insane. And some of it was like crossover, like Etsy
Mm-hmm.
might have a need for front end people across three different teams. And so it's like, let's find the person and then let's figure where we're slotting them in. Um, at Etsy, we were very lucky. We had a lot of applicants. Like I hardly ever had time for outbound because Etsy was really out there in the open source world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Etsy's pretty famous for Deployinator, which was like their like real-time deployment tool. And so I mean, that was great. That was a recruiter's dream, that I wake up, come in, and there's like 20 or 30 applicants there just waiting for me to look at.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that is like a major thing that I would recommend to companies. Like, employer branding isn't just having some nice videos on your site, but like, truly doing things to establish yourself as a powerhouse in the development community. Really like getting out there. Like, Etsy also like gave up some of its office space for some coding classes for like non-coders to transition in development positions, and especially focusing on women and diverse people and stuff. And so I highly recommend that companies do things like that, because that really, really helps the recruiters out.
Sounds again like they're at the forefront. You hear companies thinking about doing stuff like that now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool that they did that. What was kind of like your overall day-to-day structure kind of look like as an in-house recruiter at a tech company back in the day?
Yeah, so we would have, interviews usually starting in the morning. And so my morning was welcoming people and then making sure that they got to their first person. And then you kind of have to babysit what's going on with that all day long, because inevitably something may happen where like a candidate just gets left in the interview room and the next person wasn't alerted or something. So you're always just watching, is everything moving correctly there? So you've got that in your periphery. Then you're going through applications and figuring out who needs initial calls. Generally, as recruiters, we set those up with ourselves, and then moving other people along into next steps of the process. And then you probably have somebody at offer phase, and so you're meeting with the hiring manager, you're meeting with finance, you're trying to understand what the appropriate leveling is going to be, and so putting together an offer package, and then usually delivering that in a stairwell or something. Like, I don't know. I mean, now I have the luxury of working at home. I don't know what it's been like for the past decade, but when I was in tech in New York, open offices were the hot thing. And let me tell you, as a person in HR, like, that was tricky, right? Because you're like trying to talk to people about confidential information, like their future salary. Like, you can't have people walking by. So it's like we're always like literally hiding near like a pile of garbage bags or something, trying to roll out these offers.
That's so funny. And on the flip side, even my personal experience, I mean, how many candidates are talking in stairwells, right? Doing interviews.
Yeah.
And I talk to candidates to this day, like, give me 1 second, first. Let me just get off my desk. And then you hear like doors open and close. Like, okay, I'm at a safe location. They're like looking around. So you ended up working for yourself at a business model that you didn't have experience with. So like with me, I learned recruiting at a nationwide agency. Like, I learned the systems, and for better or for worse, I learned all of that. And you didn't, a lot of your experience was in-house. So how difficult was it for you to ramp up? How difficult was it for you to even just learn the basics of even starting your own business, from even basic things like taxes, incorporating? I'm sure there's hundreds of things that go through our mind as a recruiter running a full desk, but then adding now the responsibilities of running a successful, profitable business, and then eventually making that leap and evolving to hiring people. I mean, can you talk me through the different phases of like maybe your sanity and stress levels, and how you were able to successfully make that jump from one plateau to the next?
Well, so I had run a business before. I had owned 2 coffee shops in Seattle. So I knew about QuickBooks and taxes and all of that. So that wasn't the new part. I think the new thing was like really trying to help people be metrics based with the right metrics. That was kind of a challenge, because I mean, a lot of agencies use metrics, but I think that sometimes it can become a double-edged sword. Like, if people think that you care about how many candidates they spoke to that day or something, then it starts becoming a quantity thing and not a quality thing. And so just kind of figuring out how to measure the right things and how to get people to do those right things, I think was really one of the challenges. And then of course, like, I have those hire and fire decisions that I have to make myself. Like, it doesn't get easier just because I have my own business doesn't mean I'm not doing layoffs now. I mean, I do have to let people go sometimes if they're not performing and stuff. And I mean, my philosophy on that is the same as it was when I was an HR director. And that my biggest hope is that it was not a surprise. That, if I do need to let somebody go, that when I pull them into my office and I ask them, why do you think we're meeting today? That they know exactly what the meeting is about. So I do really try to give people actionable feedback in the true hope that they'll turn their performance around and that I won't have to let them go. But that's honestly one of the hardest things I think about running the business. The other thing is, like, as an in-house recruiter, I never had to do business development. So that is something that does not naturally come to me. Like, how do you reach out to people and ask them if they need recruiting help? And so it's something that I'm getting better at little by little, but that does not come to me naturally. I am not naturally a salesperson at all.
So would you say, if you were to look at agency recruiting or a full desk recruiting from a high level, you got the biz dev client side, then you got the candidate side, you feel a lot more comfortable on the latter. Is that correct? Interfacing with people, developing strong relationships, cultivating them.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how you got your first clients? Was it through, I mean, I'm assuming at this time, like working at great companies, you probably built a really great network.
That's exactly it. It was like that, people who had been directors of engineering and stuff at Etsy and AppNexus now were like CTOs or VPs of engineering somewhere else, and I could reach out to them and see if they needed some hiring help. So yeah, that was how I got the first few contracts.
I'm telling you, and I think if you're listening and you're thinking about working for yourself, whether in recruiting or not, I mean that this is the way to do it. Like have a good number of experience in whatever profession that you're in, develop really strong relationships and really strong good relationships, because in the event, right, like you do end up saying, hey, I want to work for myself, that's the easiest way to get business.
Absolutely.
100%. So everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. I mean, so like two things that I would say. For one, growth is not linear. I mean, things grew linearly for a number of years, and then you probably saw too, but like 2020 was a down year. That was like our one down year. And then 2021, it like tripled 2020's business. It was insane. And we've never had a year do that. But it seemed like we reached some critical mass of happy customers that were giving referrals to other people and stuff. We had also gotten in good with some VCs that were giving us referrals to their portfolio companies. But it was just kind of weird, because it's like they say, oh, like an overnight success, X years in the making. It kind of felt like that type of thing. So
no,
yeah.
I think hard work and consistency compounds. And then at a certain point, it will inevitably snowball, right? And I loved how you just said it so perfectly. Like I completely agree. I think if all you do is focused on just transaction, you don't care about the person you placed, let alone even your own client, the founder, hiring manager, you never talk to them again, you're leaving immense amount of opportunity on the table for them to happily refer you to other people in their network if you chose to maintain and cultivate that relationship really, really well, even after all the good work is done, right? And so I think that's awesome. I think for me, who had a little bit more of like a sales business background, I wouldn't say it came naturally. I think doing business and lead gen is still always going to have a level of discomfort to a lot of people, because you're just reaching out to people you don't know. And so it just honestly takes like trial by fire and just evolving and learning from mistakes and getting a lot of feedback to be better. But for someone that did not have a sales or agency background like yourself, it's really, really, really cool that you probably by now have come to a place where you feel a lot more confident doing that, but then you were able to kickstart your business in a very, very smart way, leveraging your own network. What was it like to do you remember the first hire for your agency? Was this person responsible for just sourcing candidates, clients, a bit of both? Like
he was 360.
How did you find this person?
Through my network. He was somebody that when I had been in-house, he had been a vendor to us. And so I knew him that way.
And then this person, sorry, you said that was this person that, did he or she have a recruiting background before you hired them? They did. Yeah. Okay. So what were your thoughts or I guess, what are your thoughts now hiring more experienced recruiters than hiring someone inexperienced and you just teach them from the ground up? Do you have any preference one way or another?
Yeah, most of our hires are experienced recruiters. I mean, of course, like you may need to break some habits, like everybody does the candidate intake call a little differently and stuff. And there's certain info that we want to get. We've talked about hiring maybe some recent college grads and stuff. I don't think it's a bad strategy. but it does require having the time to really properly train them, and that's been a constraint.
Gotcha. Do you think that having success as an in-house recruiter can easily translate to success as an agency recruiter?
I don't know that I'd use the word easily, but I think that it can. Like, again, I think that you can leverage your strengths as an in-house recruiter in the
Mhm.
agency world. Like, again, I think like really the personalization of each, each placement. Like, I think that that really can serve an in-house recruiter well going into agency, but I think that then you have to have like a lot more view on your metrics and stuff like that,
Mhm.
even more so than being in-house. And so I think really understanding those things. Also in-house, like, you have applicants, you don't really have those so much as an agency recruiter, things like that, like knowing that you eat what you kill and you have to hustle and stuff, like it's a different pace.